Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Husker Talk podcast. I'm your host, Sam Laughlin, joined once again by the man himself, Johnny Zerker. Johnny, how are you?
How we doing?
It's a good day to be here. It's signing day special episode. What do you say?
Yes, sir. I love it.
How you feel? We're here. It's about 5 o'clock here, and just finished up a busy signing day. I know ESPN was busy. Joe Tessitore was in there since about 8 a.m. all day today doing that. We didn't have to endure that today. We had classes and everything. We kind of ran around, but we're here now, and we're here to talk about some signing day. Huh? What do you say?
I love it. This exciting day in football.
Yep. So we're gonna just talk about the signings that happened today, discuss some of our favorites, look at some hit and misses, and then finish it off. We'll talk about some Keyshawn Johnson Sr. comments about recruiting. So let's start off. Who's a Husker? Let's look at the special signings today. So the first one was Kurt Raftel. He's the tight end from Indiana. We know a little bit about him. We got, I think, 2 tight ends coming into this class. Tight end will be a strength that we'll need to regain after losing Ethan Carter.
Yeah, he's a special one, Kurt. I think he was a 3-star. He picked Nebraska over Iowa, so you always like to see that. But I think he was a lock coming in. He officially committed a couple days ago. News signing, but that was a good pickup.
Yep. Second on the list was Matt Sichterman, 3-star offensive lineman out of Ohio. We added a couple offensive linemen. We look at Chris Walker coming from Lincoln East, and we saw a couple guys coming from in-state. How important is getting those in-state guys?
I mean, you love to see it because, 90s, we always recruited the big boys from Nebraska, and it's always nice to see. Like, you never like to see Nebraska people go and play somewhere else. Yeah. You like to keep those guys in state. It's fun to watch them grow as players in their 4 years at Nebraska.
Yep. Fourth sign of the day was Drew Ward, the linebacker from Michigan. I know there's a lot of hype on him coming in. You excited to see Drew get into some action?
Yeah, I'll see him, Avery Roberts. I'm excited to see this young linebacker core, see if they can do some work.
Mm-hmm. Then fifth next was Brandon James, an offensive lineman from Austin, Texas. Always good when we can get some guys from Austin, don't you think?
Yeah, take them from Texas. I love it.
Exactly. Perfect. Right from their own backyard. And then we have Jalen Bradley, who we knew was coming from Bellevue West. We talked about him more in our last episode. Again, that's more talking in-state, how important that is. Keeping it in-state, seventh signing today was Austin Allen, the tight end from Aurora. What do we know about Austin?
We don't know. I don't know a lot about him, but he's a big boy, basketball player, so he's athletic. You know that, and excited to see him go along with Kurt Raftel. We'll see how they do.
Yep. Then we have DeAndre Thomas, defensive tackle, signing from Oklahoma. Then ninth today was Ben Miles, the fullback from Louisiana, and yes, he was Les Miles' son. Did you watch ESPN when he signed and Les Miles pulled out a Husker hat?
He was excited. He got the hat on.
That's always good to see. In 1 month, we've seen 2 guys go on and rep some Husker gear. You saw Keyshawn Johnson Sr. during the national championship repping Husker gear, and then Les Miles today. Les Miles, when he was on, he actually had some interesting stories. He was on there with like Mac Brown, which say what you will about him, he's whatever. But he was on there, and all those coaches were talking about some of their recruiting experiences, and they were almost complaining about when they went to houses how some of the moms would cook just these like huge meals, and they'd end up eating on signing day like, I don't know, 5-6 meals, a night. Mac Brown was talking about like in the days where you could have coaches in the room for signing day. Well, where now there's so many rules and regulations they have to. Like we see Mike Riley had his own little studio here in Lincoln, but back then, like coaches would jump around like 14 different places in one night.
Crazy.
It's crazy to think about. But
so many regulations now. The NCAA is going crazy.
Yeah.
But
And
don't blame them.
And the recruiting process itself has gone pretty crazy.
Insane.
But we'll get to that in a second. Let's keep on this list here. 10th was Guy Thomas, defensive end from Miami. Again, always good to get those Florida, Texas, California guys. Mm-hmm. Again, another local guy, Chris Walker, offensive tackle from Lincoln East. How big will getting these offensive line guys be for us, Johnny?
We got Nick Gates coming back. I think he can show these guys what to do, how to play, and I think a lot of these offensive linemen, I think they're going to get a shot this year, or next year, and I'm excited because obviously our offensive line needs to get a little better, but I mean, we'll see.
I mean, you saw situations the past couple years. People talk so much about when Tommy got hurt when he had the hamstring problems, how it eliminated the part of his game where he had to roll out, where he had to roll out of the pocket, and that's where like a lot of his big plays came from. But I mean, if you can eliminate him, even having to roll out of the pocket,
and it doesn't help. I mean, our offensive line has been banged up past 5 years. We always seem to be having injury problems on our offensive line, so hopefully those guys stay healthy and hopefully they get their shot.
Yeah, depth is a big key, especially on that offensive line. 12th signing of the day, we had Willie Hampton, the linebacker from West Palm Beach, Florida. And then 13th, we got Tyjon Lindsey, wide receiver from Corona, California, our highest-rated recruit. We'll get to more on him in a second. Deontay Watts, the defensive tackle from Plano. And then along with him, we had another guy from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Damian Daniels, the defensive tackle from Dallas. He was the fun one to see. He had a very emotional commitment. You saw him; he had some tears. He was kind of stumbling over his words a little bit, and then he eventually pulled the Huskers hat out of his underneath the podium. What I noticed about the Huskers hat was it wasn't an N or anything. It was literally just a hat that said Huskers. I thought that was pretty good.
Did you see his after his commitment? He changed into another suit. He had a red tie, red striped tie. He had a Nebraska handkerchief. It was kind of cool.
That's awesome. I think what you see with this recruiting class is that we haven't seen in many recruiting classes recently is these guys seem to come in with the passion already there. And guys out of state, I mean, we look at the Calabasas guys. We already know about them. We already know that they're coming in. They're fired up. They know what it's all about here. But then to see Damian Daniels talk about the passion here in the environment. I mean, here's a quote he said. He said, even when I didn't want to speak to them, like the coaches and recruiters, and like they would speak to me even when I didn't want to speak to them, and I say thank you for that. He added that he was won over by the environment and everything in the whole community aspect, and his future teammate was on a visit with him in September when he came to Lincoln. So it was a very emotional day for him, and I think that was super cool to see that, just to see that passion and emotion already here before guys step on campus officially as students.
Yeah, that was a fun commitment to watch.
So there's a list of some guys who signed. Let's look about who's gone elsewhere. There's not a ton of surprises here. I think we kind of expected some of these guys to go where they were supposed to go. There's a big one there at the end that I see on the list. We'll get to there, and then you can have your say about it, Johnny, because I know you feel pretty strongly about it. We got C.J. Verdell, 3-star running back, went to Oregon. I don't think anybody was super surprised about that. Demonorde Lenore, I have to be careful how I say that, 4-star cornerback. He was looking at Oregon, USC, and Nebraska. Joseph Lewis, this was somebody that I was hoping we could sneak out. I think he's actually a really good wide receiver, 4-star wide receiver.
Good.
He ended up going to USC. We talked about him a little bit, John. We have so many wide receivers, it seems, already. Do you think that might have been one of the reasons why he chose not to go here?
Yeah, his buddy, Greg Johnson, who they go to the same high school, I think he had a little something to do with it too, because he also committed to USC. But yeah, he said just the proximity. It's in his backyard, USC.
Yeah.
He said he had a lot of good things to say about Nebraska, though. He said they were awesome to him. He thanked them, and it was just, it's just a tough situation for him. But I don't blame him going to USC. They're right there. It'll be fun to watch him.
Yeah, it is tough. You look at USC, UCLA, that Los Angeles region. A lot of those guys who go to school in Los Angeles and the area surrounding, it's hard to get them to go anywhere except USC and UCLA. And why not? 70, 80 degrees, 90 degrees year round. Sometimes it is what it is. And like I said, we didn't really expect any of these guys to really go anywhere else. We look at Brian Thompson, 3-star wide receiver, ended up going to Utah. Jeremiah Hawkins, 3-star athlete, went to Cal. Like you said, Greg Johnson, 4-star athlete, going to USC. And then the big one, Jameer Calvin. This was a saga. I think
tough.
you could describe it. So let's hear you talk about it a little bit, John.
Yeah, I mean, tough situation for him. Tough situation for Husker fans. I mean, I'm biased. I'm mad. I mean, I'm not happy with him, but you see a lot of these kids. I mean, they're high school kids. I mean, they're gonna do stuff they didn't want to do. So I mean, they're gonna decommit, and I don't blame them for doing that. But the way that he handled it, I mean, he obviously he could have handled it better. I mean, look, here's his timeline. So before he was going to the Army All-American Bowl, and he was going to commit there, and everyone said he's going to commit to Nebraska. Nebraska is the place to go. So on January 7th, it says he committed to Oregon State. So everyone was like, "Wow, that's weird." But you could tell there was something wrong. He was crying after he committed. And then an article came out a couple days later and said his mom was like, his heart's with Nebraska. Yeah. He's close to the coaches there.
And the big thing about it was proximity to home. They wanted to be able to see his games. Pac-12, being in California, if he goes to Oregon State, I mean, you're guaranteed either USC, UCLA, Cal. Stanford too is in that region where they can go and see it. So that was a big factor, his mom said. But more so his mom reopened, recruiting than himself, which I thought was interesting. But go ahead.
So she gave hope to Husker fans. I read that and I was like, wow, I still think this guy's got a shot. So 10 days later on January 17th, he decommitted from Oregon State. So I'm like, all right, I mean, he's going to come to Nebraska. 10 days later from January 17th, he committed to Nebraska. So this was 5 days before National Signing Day. So everything that's happened, this dude, I mean, he's a lock. Yeah, he's a lock.
And then we look at Twitter.
Yeah,
this is where like all the things started to unravel. What was going on Twitter, John?
Yeah, so I mean, Twitter's a huge platform for these athletes nowadays, and for fans to look at these athletes. And yesterday he followed, I think it was like 4 or 5 coaches from Washington State, and those Husker fans are always following him.
Oh yeah.
So that got around quick, and then he retweeted something from Washington State fans, said he'd be awesome at Washington State, he'd be a great fit there. Retweeted that. So yesterday things were getting hectic. People were like, "Is he gonna decommit from Nebraska?" I mean, he just committed 5 days before signing day. So, and then today he did the impossible, decommitted from Nebraska. Yep. Committed to Washington State and signed with Washington State.
Yeah, with Mike Leach at WashU, or I guess Wash State. But, I mean, from his perspective, you look at where he was going. You Pac-12, you got like the fast, pass-heavy type offense.
Air raid.
Especially with Washington State. They barely run the ball in a game even. So you can understand where he's coming from. But I think that this might be an example for future recruits because, like you said, Twitter is such a strong platform for recruits nowadays. I just think this is an example of just wait until you really know because I mean, you can go to the All-American Bowl. You don't have to commit there. It's okay, guys.
Yeah.
Like, I know you want to do on national television and everything like that, and I get that. But maybe just hold off until you really know because sometimes you rush in these decisions and then you end up going through 3 schools in the span of 1 month,
Yeah, I mean, you don't blame a lot of these kids. They're high schoolers.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
The way Jameer handled it, all of this in less than a month, I'm sure he could have handled it better.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I'd put that on Jameer as much as coaches and parents and like the supporting cast around him should have done a better job at that. But I don't know. You hope not to see like so much of that in the future, but you don't know with the way recruits going. Yeah. But we'll get into that.
It's bound to happen.
Yeah. So we'll take a little break right here. We'll see if we can pay the bills a little bit. Do you want to advertise on the Husker Talk podcast? Well, go ahead and contact me at Sam Laughlin on Twitter, and go ahead and do that through direct message. We're open to just about anything. We'll negotiate, and it's a good opportunity to advertise. And like we said earlier, we had one of our best shows as far as listeners last weekend, and that was fun. You get people to tweet you around, and then next thing you know, you get advertisers. Who knows?
Good time.
Again, if you want to advertise, just contact me on Twitter through direct message at Sam Laughlin, SamLaughglin. All right, so let's go back to recruiting here. This is the signing day special episode. Who are some of our favorite signings? And so here we get to kind of look at all the guys who are here already, the early enrollees, and guys who have signed today. Who are a couple of your favorite signings, John?
So I like Damian Daniels. He was a 4-star out of Dallas. Guy Thomas. He was committed to Nebraska, but it wasn't like 100%. So it was good. He signed with us. That was awesome to see. And then DeAndre Thomas. He's a defensive lineman from Mustang, Oklahoma. And Deontay Watts is a defensive lineman from Plano, Texas. The reason I like these guys is, I mean, a lot of our like recruiting was based on, oh, we got a really good wide receiver class. All these guys from California. This is awesome. But these guys kind of went under the radar. And, I mean, 4 solid defensive lineman recruits.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm excited to see these guys.
I'm excited to see, because you said, like we talked earlier about Damian Daniels, I'm excited to see those personalities work with a personality like Bob Diaco. You know how much I love, how much I'm on the Bob Diaco hype train. I would love to see that. I agree with you though. I think looking at the defensive side of the ball, if Diaco can get the guys he wants in, we can definitely be one of the best defenses in the nation once again in a couple years, and it starts with these guys. I love Drew Ward, the linebacker from Michigan. Okay. I like Jalen Bradley just because I love getting guys from Nebraska, and that's awesome, especially a place like Bellevue West. That's huge. And I think if we can get him right, if we can hit the nail on the head with him, I think we'll be in business.
He's quick. He's athletic. He's got a good cut.
Oh, yeah.
He's fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he scored don't quote me, like 50, 60 touchdowns like last season alone. That's just something ridiculous
and
like
his
that.
Best game was like the state championship. I mean, he performs in big situations.
Yeah, and you need those guys. I like Ben Miles, Les Miles' son, just simply for that fact. We'll get into the conversation about sons and recruiting here in a second too. And Tyjon Lindsey, the wide receiver core, that's going to be big. I know you can't really put Tanner Lee into this conversation because he's a junior, but I'm excited to see the quarterback competition, of course, between Tanner Lee and Tristan Gebbia. I think that'll be interesting to see how they learn under there, and of course Patrick O'Brien in there too. It'll be interesting to see the quarterback position and just the backfield side of the football. So like we said earlier, we're going to talk about Keyshawn Johnson Sr.'s comments. So recently he spoke with Hail Varsity. I think it was as recent as yesterday, January 31st even. And he found it comical that people thought about Keyshawn Jr. that he was only getting recruited because of his dad. And when he was talking about this, he kind of references Amir Abdullah. When he goes on a tangent about the whole stars, like how we're rating these players, and like how it's pretty much irrelevant because you look at Amir Abdullah, a guy who's in the NFL now, doing quite well, one of the best Husker running backs of this decade, of this century even. And he talks about how he was a 2-star, how like these stars, like we talk about it all, but it doesn't matter. How much would you say goes into this recruiting process? Is it over the top? Are we right on, or is it not enough? What do you think?
It's tough to tell because, I mean, you definitely got to look at I mean, it's good for like ESPN. I mean, National Signing Day is a huge thing, and I mean they do make a big point about all these stars, and I mean you will get a guy like Amir Abdullah, but I mean in a way I don't think like these stars matter. I don't think it's like overhyped, but I mean they do help because you see Alabama, you see Ohio State. I mean they're getting 5-star recruits in like every year. I mean obviously they help them, but it is. I mean all the time you see a 3-star and does insane. I mean Amir Abdullah, 2-star.
You look at Clemson, the guy who caught the game-winning touchdown in the national championship game was a walk-on. Yeah.
Austin Carr from Northwestern, Big Ten wide receiver of the year. He was a walk-on.
The point I love that he made was that the STARS system is based on what camps you go to, and I thought that was a great point because say you go to one camp or the other, they're going to judge you on that. If you don't go to our camp, well then you're a 3-star. But if you go to our camp, then we'll make you a 4-star. So there is some different things that go into it that I think it is a little bit over the top. But you're right. In the days of big media like we're in, with things like ESPN, I mean, what else are they going to talk about in
Yeah.
February? You know, you can only talk about who won the national championship for so long, and really, spring games are too far away, and preseason's miles away. So it is kind of something they need to talk that they need something to talk about. There's been talks of pushing signing day, later. I think that'll just increase it even more. I think it'll just make it even. But like you said, these are young kids that are making big decisions. I think like one of the biggest issues I have with it is you talk about how Twitter becomes such a big platform for recruiting now. It also makes a big platform for the fans, the minority fans, the outlier fans that are more extreme in their ways of saying things, and it gives them an opportunity to go directly on to and talk directly to these recruits. What do you think about that? I mean, I think it's probably pretty like a consensual thing that it's probably just not a good idea to tweet at recruits. How do you feel about that?
I mean, some fans are just absolutely crazy, and they'll say things to recruits. I'm looking this up right now. Keyshawn actually tweeted today. He said, let me find it.
Well, and Keyshawn's a good example as well.
Yeah.
As far as
he knows how to interact with fans on Twitter.
A recruit who used Twitter as a platform to reach out. And I mean, in the sense of these recruits, it's also a great way to promote your brand. As a lot of these guys have. We get so excited about them because we talk about their passion and how they want to be here. It gives them a chance to do that as well.
Yeah.
But
it's just weird when I hate when fans are over the top with tweeting at recruits. Like here, Keyshawn said, "Fans, please lay off and don't give other recruits a reason not to come." So obviously, I mean, if Keyshawn said it, he's been through the process. These recruits, they interact with fans on Twitter, and they're like, that. I mean, that's a big step. They know what they're looking at. They know what they're deciding when they're seeing all these fans on Twitter.
Yeah, and you can go to any tweets of those guys who are being heavily recruited and just look at the replies.
Yep.
And it's just a casual tweet about just getting some burgers with some friends or whatever. And then you'll see tweets like, "Oh, was that a good burger? Did you enjoy the burger?" Just kind of
we got good burgers in Lincoln.
It's really weird stuff, and just kind of forced friendship upon these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder what, from the perspective of a recruit, I wonder what that is like. I wonder if they like kind of getting that attention, because I mean, you talk about these guys. I mean, they go on national television to make their decision, but it's the outlier fans, because every fan base has them. You can say, I mean, what you want about it, but every fan base has the one or two fans, probably a little more depending on where you're at, that have the more extremist route on their opinions, and if you don't commit here, they'll tweet at you.
Yep.
And that's just the reality of the world we live in, and the accessibility of
they want their way
of recruiting. Yeah.
But you're not going to get. I mean, these are high school guys. That's what everyone forgets. That these are high schoolers making really big decisions in their life.
And I think some of the recruits realize it. I think some of them realize that they're not all they won't judge a university on these one fans. But I mean, some of them they're just so young, they just don't understand, you know. And what do you think about the recruiting process? They were talking about it on ESPN today. I was telling you about. They were talking about the recruiting memories, the craziest memories. Do you think that it's gone too far, where it's kind of been a system where we'll recruit kids as early as 8th grade, freshman year, whereas it used to be kind of scout them junior year, and then they kind of really commit senior year and stuff like that? Has it been too long of a drawn out process?
Yeah, I mean, what was the story? It was USC. I saw a story on it a couple months ago. USC, they offered a kid who was in 7th grade.
Yeah. And
then he ended up, I mean, through the high school, I mean, he wasn't good enough for USC.
Oh yeah.
And they ended up having to drop the offer, and that's just a tough situation. So I mean, they go too far, and it's this recruiting process is, I mean, it's getting, I mean, sometimes it gets out of hand.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people forget is that like these kids in many cases are still not completely done with puberty, and like as funny as it sounds, but they're not done growing.
Yeah.
I mean, 7th grade is absolutely ridiculous, but
That's
if you just
insane.
look at kids getting recruited sophomore year, let's go to basketball. Like we know Ed Chang, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at somebody like that who's getting recruited sophomore year. With Ed Chang, it's less of a liability because you already know he has the skill set and the size. If he grows anymore, it's just better, But if you put all your eggs in a basket for a kid who's a freshman, sophomore, the chances of him panning out not to be the size or like the skill level that you want, because everybody peaks at different points.
Mm-hmm.
The chances of it not working out are so much greater than it working out. But I do think it's just a result of the world we live in. It's a product of
we want things now.
Exactly. So we're wrapping up the show here. That's all. I mean, what do you got to say? Would you say this was a successful day in Husker recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, no surprises. I don't really think. Jameer Calvin was a surprise yesterday, but I felt today he was gonna go to Washington State. Pumped about that Elijah Blades commitment. I think that was a big one.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I'm pretty happy with how things did. Top 25 recruiting class. We're first in the Big Ten West, and so it was. I think it was a good day.
Yeah,
good day.
I think that's huge. Like you said, first in Big Ten West.
Mm-hmm.
That's big. I think what we're going to see is in the coming years. We look at the Big Ten East right now. We talk about how stacked it is. I think we look at the Big Ten West. We look at teams that are recruiting well. You look at Northwestern, Wisconsin. I think those are going to be two teams that we're going to compete a lot with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Illinois with Lovie Smith. I think he might be able to bring in some true athletes. I mean, he's in Champaign, Illinois. He's got Chicago, and there's always good products that come out of Illinois. It'll be interesting to see, though. I think with a lot of these guys coming in, I think it'll get more hotly contested in the West. And as long as Iowa's not getting them, I'm okay with everybody else getting them. You know what I mean?
It's exciting.
But yeah, you got anything else?
That should do it.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Husker Talk podcast. Thanks again to the J School. And thank you, Johnny Zerker, for coming in.
Thanks for having me again. Go Big Red.
Yeah, go Big Red. This is the Husker Talk podcast signing off.